Hey guys, it's Ellie. Welcome back to Bite-Sized Book of Mormon. I'm glad to have you with me. So if you've never been here before, this is just a podcast where I read through one chapter of the Book of Mormon each episode, and to give a little bit of context, a little bit of insight, a little bit of good times. So stick around. So if you remember last episode, we read Alma chapter 37, which is the second half of Alma's letter to his son, Helaman, where he basically told him to take care of sacred things. He told him to take care of the records that he was eventually going to hand down to him. He told him to take care of the story of the Jaredites as found in the 24 plates, and also he told him to have faith unshaken. He told him to remember the story of the Liahona and remember that it is by small and simple things that great things are come to pass. Sometimes those great things are miracles that you don't notice in your everyday life, and it's very easy to forget that they're miracles. And by the way, this upcoming chapter is actually to Shiblon. So we've passed Helaman, now we're moving on to Alma's other son, Shiblon. So yeah, if you haven't listened to that one already, go back and do that, but until then, let's read Alma chapter 38. My son, give ear to my words, for I say unto you, even as I said unto Helaman, that inasmuch as ye shall keep the commandments of God, ye shall prosper in the land, and inasmuch as ye will not keep the commandments of God, ye shall be cut off from his presence. And now, my son, I trust that I shall have great joy in you, because of your steadiness and your faithfulness unto God. For as you have commenced in your youth to look toward the Lord your God, even so I hope that you will continue in keeping his commandments. For blessed is he that endureth to the end. I say unto you, my son, that I have had great joy in thee already, because of thy faithfulness, and thy diligence, and thy patience, and thy long-suffering among the people of the Zoramites. For I know that thou wast in bonds, yea, and I also know that thou wast stoned for the word's sake, and thou didst bear all these things with patience, because the Lord was with thee, and now thou knowest that the Lord did deliver thee. So, this is some pretty interesting story that we didn't catch before when we heard the story of the Zoramites. So if you remember, the story of Alma 32 and 33 and some of the chapters before that is that Alma took a posse of his closest missionary homies, including a couple of his sons, and they went to preach among the Zoramites, and that was where the famous Alma 32 address on faith was given. It was given to the poor Zoramites because they were actually gonna listen to the word. And he brought his son Shiblon along with him, and apparently Shiblon went off and did his own thing and got stoned for it. And it also says that he was in bounds for it. And that is wild to me. But it sounds like Shiblon is very unshaken. It sounds like Shiblon is very steady in his faith. Because this is a very short chapter. Helaman got 2 long chapters because, he's probably the oldest son, so he's probably going to be Alma's successor. But he was righteous. Shiblon doesn't get much. He basically gets a short little chapter being like, hey, good job, you're doing good. And then Corianton, which is going to be chapters 39 through 42, oh, he gets a talking to. Oh man, just look forward to that. But this chapter is basically Alma saying to his son Shiblon, good job, you're so cool. Like, you're really doing good. And he really makes that clear because in verse 2, he basically says, I trust that I shall have great joy in you. Because, he says, he has steadiness, faithfulness, and he's commenced in his youth to look to the Lord your God. And so it sounds like Shiblon has always been, looking to God and finding that faith and having that steadiness that he's always had. And yeah, that stuff starts when you're young. Like, if you start caring about the gospel when you're young, then it sticks with you better. It's a little bit harder if you only start caring later in life, which obviously it can be done, and it has been done by tons and tons of people, but it starts young. Anyways, this chapter is basically just going to be a letter from his dad being like, good job, keep doing what you're doing. And now, my son Shiblon, I would that ye should remember that as much as ye shall put your trust in God, even so ye shall be delivered out of your trials and your troubles and your afflictions, and ye shall be lifted up at the last day. Now, my son, I would not that ye should think that I know these things of myself, but it is the Spirit of God which is in me, which maketh these things known unto me. For if I had not been born of God, I should not have known these things. But behold, the Lord in his great mercy sent his angel to declare unto me that I must stop the work of destruction among his people. Yea, and I have seen an angel face to face, and he spake with me, and his voice was as thunder, and it shook the whole earth. And it came to pass that I was in 3 days and 3 nights in the most bitter pain and anguish of soul, and never, until I did cry unto the Lord Jesus Christ for mercy, did I receive a remission of my sins. Behold, I did cry unto him, and I did find peace to my soul. So this is kind of like Alma 36 light. Like, he doesn't have quite as much detail. It's not a chiasmus like Alma 36 was, but it goes over the same topics. He's going over his conversion story, just in a lot fewer words. It's kind of actually hilarious. It's very truncated as compared to Alma 36. But I do like the term that he uses in verse 8, where he says, I did cry unto him, and I did find peace to my soul. I just think that's nice. It's a nice little sum up of the experience. He's like, it wasn't until I cried unto Christ that I found peace. Like, until then, I was racked with pain. And it was only once I turned to Christ that changed. That I started to feel joy and find peace again. And also a small note on verse 6, where he says, I do not know these things of myself, but it is the Spirit of God which is in me, which maketh these things known unto me. Which I have a note on it that says, not the angel. So it's very easy to credit the fact that Alma got visited by an angel for his conversion. You're like, well, yeah, duh, if I was visited by an angel too, I would also be as converted as Alma was. But would you? Like, the famous examples of Laman and Lemuel come to mind. They saw an angel more times than Alma did. But Alma took it to heart. Alma faced his sins and felt the atonement of Christ wash over him. And Laman and Lemuel just kind of let it roll off their backs. They didn't really do much about it. But Alma did something about it. And now, because of the fact that he was born of God, because he went through that experience, he now has the Spirit of God with him. He has that discernment power. So it's not the angel that gave him the knowledge that he has. It's the Spirit that he cultivated himself after the angel kind of sparked the process. And I mentioned this when the conversion story originally happened in Mosiah, but I just think it's a really important thing. That, like, Alma's faith isn't just because of the angel. The angel started it, but we cannot credit his conversion to the angel completely. Alma did a lot of work on his own, and that only increases my respect for him, which is crazy because I didn't know that it could go much higher than it already is. And now, my son, I have told you this, that ye may learn wisdom, that ye may learn of me that there is no other way or means whereby man can be saved, only in and through Christ. Behold, he is the life and light of the world. Behold, he is the word of truth and righteousness. And now, as ye have begun to teach the word, even so I would that ye should continue to teach, and I would that ye would be diligent and temperate in all things. See that ye are not lifted up unto pride, yea, see that ye do not boast in your own wisdom, nor of your much strength. Use boldness, but not overbearance, and also see that ye bridle all your passions, that ye may be filled with love. See that ye refrain from idleness. Do not pray as the Zoramites do, for ye have seen that they pray to be heard of men, and to be praised for their wisdom. Do not say, O God, I thank thee that we are better than our brethren, but rather say, O Lord, forgive my unworthiness, and remember my brethren in mercy. Yea, acknowledge your unworthiness before God at all times. And may the Lord bless your soul, and receive you at the last day into his kingdom, to sit down in peace. Now go, my son, and teach the word unto this people. Be sober. My son, farewell. So, like I said, a very short chapter to Shiblon. First of all, who names their son Shiblon? Like, how do you nickname Shiblon? Shibby? I don't know. Shib? Like the dog Shiba Inu? Anyways, I'm getting off track. But I do like the ending of this chapter actually quite a lot. So after he quickly goes over his conversion story, he explains that he tells him this because he's teaching him, as he says in verse 9, there is no other way or means whereby man can be saved. And he goes further, he says, he is the life and light of the world. He is the word of truth and righteousness. So we're dropping some titles for Christ here. The light and life of the world, and the word of truth and righteousness. It's interesting that he calls Christ the Word, because that's very biblical, isn't it? Like the Logos, the whole Book of John kind of introduction thing. That's pretty cool, Christ being called the Word. So that is actually very interestingly biblical. I do like that. But also, again, this chapter, in addition to all the ones before it, it focuses on Christ. The main central moral is that it focuses on Christ and being humble in his sight and praising him and worshiping him and creating a relationship with him. This is just another chapter in a long line of chapters that have been centering on that. And I pointed that out last episode, but it's just cool that it's so focused. It's really, really focused, especially in this section, and I love it. Another thing that I absolutely love is in verse 12. He's kind of telling his son to be temperate. He's telling his son to have moderation in all his things. He says, use boldness, but not overbearance. And especially here, he says a very famous phrase, see that ye bridle all your passions. Not only that, but that ye may be filled with love. So don't bridle your passions to restrict yourself. Don't bridle your passions because God said so. Bridle your passions that ye may be filled with love. That's interesting, because usually when you think of bridling your passions, it means like restricting yourself. It means avoiding temptation. It means moderation, as I said. But what he's saying is that having this type of moderation isn't a form of self-restriction, but it is allowing you to be filled with love. That's really interesting. And another thing that I absolutely love is verses 13 and 14, which basically tells him to not pray like the Zoramites did. Because, duh, please don't pray like the Zoramites did. They're crazy. As it said in the chapter that they talked about the Rameumptom, Alma was astonished beyond all measure at seeing how they prayed. So, needless to say, do not do what they did. But he specifically says they pray to be heard of men and to be praised for their wisdom. And so he's basically saying outright, they're just performative. There is no depth, there is no meaning to their prayers. And that is what we need to have. We need to not be like them and have depth. And don't just repeat things out of habit, out of rote learning. And he also says, do not say, O God, I thank thee that we are better than our brethren, but rather say, this is verse 14, O Lord, forgive my unworthiness, and remember my brethren in mercy. And so instead of your prayers focusing on how other people are worse than you, have your prayers focus on how you are undeserving of God's love and asking mercy for your brethren. So instead of pointing and laughing at someone in your prayer, you're bringing them all together. You're saying, hey, I'm just as unworthy as you. Let's all get mercy from God together. Which is a much more unifying, much more Christ-like kind of prayer. So I really like that Alma kind of sets up a model for Shiblon to follow. But finally, the end of verse 14, he says, yea, acknowledge your unworthiness before God at all times. And I think that is partially just a way to stay humble and to remind yourself, hey, you don't actually deserve any of the awesome, cool, amazing mercy that God is giving you. This is all because He perfectly loves us, and He has immeasurable amounts of mercy for us. None of this is by our own strength. And that is what a lot of people's pitfalls are. They believe, wow, I am so righteous, and because I'm so cool and perfect, God is giving me this mercy. When in reality, we cannot be nearly good enough in this life to actually truly deserve God's love and God's mercy. There's nothing that we can do to pay back the debt that we have accrued. So it's a very important thing to remember that, like, it's His grace that saves us, ultimately. Like, we can do a lot of things to show obedience and to show respect and to worship Him, but ultimately it is His grace that saves us. And anything that we do by our own strength doesn't even come close to that. So I just like that Alma kind of reminds his son of that by saying, hey, acknowledge your unworthiness before God at all times. So not to be self-degrading, not to be like, oh, God, you must hate me, but to remind yourself of the miracle of God's love, to remind yourself of the absolute groundbreaking truth that God's mercy is. So I've already discussed it, but I'm going to make the stand-up verse for this chapter, verse 13, which says, do not pray as the Zoramites do, for ye have seen that they pray to be heard of men, and to be praised for their wisdom. Being a Christian cannot be a selfish thing. By definition, if you do things performatively, if you do things selfishly, that's not a Christian thing to do. And so we have to really focus hard on doing it for our relationship with God and not doing it for others. And it's very easy because, you know, God can sometimes feel like an abstract concept that we don't really connect with day to day, but humans, they're right all around us. They're everywhere. They're immediate. And so it's a lot easier sometimes to bow to their expectations and to their praise than it is to God's, because it's a little bit harder to see God's hand in our life as it is to see literally the other people around us. But remind yourself that you don't have to impress anyone besides God. And even then, He loves you anyways. So, anyways, it's just a really important message on not being performative, because it's deceptively easy. The Zoramites are an extreme case of like really obvious, really blatant performatism, but I think it's something that we can fall into really easily. And so it's good to stay vigilant and remember, we're not doing this for them. We're doing this for our relationship with God. This is a personal thing. Ironically, the selfish thing to do is to pray for other people, and the humble thing to do is to pray for yourself and your relationship with God, which sounds backwards, but it's not. Anyways, yeah, that was the chapter today. It was a pretty short one, but it was full of nice little nuggets that Alma just said to his faithful son. Like, he didn't really have any feedback for his son. He was just like, great, good job, keep doing what you're doing. It's kind of funny. Anyways, there's just a few links down in the show notes that I want to bring up. The first one is a quick let me know you learned link. So if you're going to shoot me a message and chat with me about something, then you can do that there, or you can DM me on Instagram, either way. Secondly, there's some links to access a digital copy of the Book of Mormon. So if you don't have your own copy, you can go ahead and click those. If you want to access it for yourself, read a chapter, read a book, read along with the podcast even, those are there for you. Thirdly, there's a quick support the show link. So if you want to shoot me a few dollars and support what I do, I would appreciate that. Next, we are on YouTube, so if you want to go subscribe to the YouTube channel, you can find the episodes there. You can also find some trivia every once in a while. I don't keep that one quite as updated as I should. But Instagram, on the other hand, which is the last link down in the show notes, is updated much more often. So follow me on Instagram if you want to access some stand-up verses, some episode clips, some Book of Mormon meme reels, and just Book of Mormon fact reels. Like, I've been making those lately too. It's actually pretty cool. And also lots of trivia on the story. It's a lot of fun. So anyways, I will see you there. But yeah, that's all I have for you today. I'll talk to you later. Bye.